from the macro, then zoom on to Sequoia, Sequoia, US, India, China, and then zoom in a bit on what we are doing as a company at Sequoia ourselves. And then, the larger 200 plus startups that we've invested in and how each one is tackling it, right? So, I mean, from a macro standpoint, it is unfortunate that people like Larry Brilliant and N. Taleb actually predicted way back in 2006. And for folks who are interested, look up Larry Brilliant's 2006 TED Talk that, he actually asked for $100 million to fight a pandemic, okay? I mean, the irony of life is the person who invented fire was burnt, right? So that's kind of the irony we are living with in the current world. And all of you know that the sheer globalization is how one, it's not a 100-ton alien that's fighting us, but it's a micron-based virus, right? I mean, unimaginable, that has held us captive, like more than 8 billion people captive in the world, for the last 3 months. Okay, so this indeed is a war. I mean, for all of you who watched, Independence Day or whatever sci-fi movies saying this indeed is a war, but we really need to play it out in a very different manner, right? I mean, this so much so is a war that any able person, who is of the right age and the right strength should be out on streets. And when my colleague Manas speaks about the challenges that doctors and people are going through, I think, I mean, if ever there was a time to give back to society, it is right here and right now. Okay, coming to Sequoia, globally, like you would have seen, we would be one of the first firms that came out as early as in the first week of March on the Black Swan memo. Again, we, at Sequoia, we are grateful to have the benefit of tribal knowledge over the last 50 years, have seen many crises, from 70s to 80s to 90s, and the tribal knowledge is passed on. Simple basic things, that we told our founders to do: raise the rounds, get cash in. CFO doesn't mean chief financial officer, it means cash flow from operations. So get everything right and make sure that you're set for the next 2 years, right? And the focus for most of our companies, if not all, has transitioned from GMV, which is gross merchandise value, to GM, which is gross margin, right? I mean, the world is changing and everybody's focusing, like Anand said, on gross margin, on cash flow, etc., as compared to the vanity metrics, if you will, in terms of growth. And that's the right time. If you asked me 5 years ago, when growth, where you had to grow exponentially, maybe GMV was the right metric, but now it is gross margin, at least for the next couple of years, right? Specifically at Sequoia, and at Sequoia India, we are extremely proud and grateful that we are one of the key partners at a fund called ACT, or Action COVID Fund. You can look that up on actgrants.in. It's a group of venture firms and founders that have set up a very tiny 100 crore fund to provide monies to scalable ideas, just like how we do investments, not an immediate band-aid or a quick fix, but to scalable ideas, to give you some, and there are about 100 volunteers across all of these firms, Axel, Chirate, across all of these firms working throughout day and night in addition to their day jobs. We've given grants to companies like MyLabs, which was the first one to, we're giving grants to oxygenators. And as we speak, we are thinking of creating a systems think tank. But I think what is missing right now, everybody's seeing what's the problem today. Nobody's telling us what's the problem 5 days later or 7 days later, right? So that's, what we are doing on the social side. Specifically for our company at Sequoia India, and this is India, Southeast Asia, Singapore, we've been extremely flexible with people and said, you can work from home as long as you like. I mean, absolutely no hang-ups. We know the situations and we know how people work in India, right? With kids, with travel restrictions, with public transport, etc. So everybody can work from home. In fact, we've gone, a step beyond and allowed a particular limit for setting up a work office, because most of us after a month would realize we would have back problems and neck problems because our homes are just not designed to work, right? And these are the small things that really matter for people. Okay, like Anand mentioned, we've got more than twice weekly check-ins with each and every member so that we cover everyone. And we go on the principle of more is less, because I mean, it doesn't matter, right? You should intrude, but all of us are seeing each other on these tiny Zoom screens. So, we should check in as much as we can, because more is less. And last, but the most important principle that we've worked with for all our employees and founders and their teams is families first. So, in case anyone has any problem, right? during the day, and everybody's now working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you need to take time off, Friday evening is equal to Monday morning, and any time in between. So just, let the team know that you are out for 3 hours, no judgments, no questions asked. And that is the talk that the firm is walking. And I can vouch for that for the last, 3 months. Coming back, to brass tacks, right? And I'm sure this is going to be repeated 100 times, like cash flow, cash is king. Unit economics also had already become the buzzword pre-COVID, where people were focusing on profitability, and for those conventional folks that were wondering what's happening, the reality actually, took a turn back and said, okay, now everybody's focusing on business. We are focused on our startups having cash runway for 2+ years, try and reskill. We've the ability to lay people off, or the request to lay people off is zero eyes. We've been telling all our startups to rescale and work with all the people, because this is a humanitarian crisis, and to lay somebody off at this time is the worst possible thing. Okay. And the good news, right? On the softer side, you spend as much time. I have spent more time with my kid than I could have ever imagined in my whole life. The earth is a lot cleaner. I'm in Bangalore, and that 6 a.m. flights and the long drive to the airport, it takes more time to get to the airport than to Bombay, right? All of that is gone. Life is a lot green. I can breathe fresh air. I can get time for yoga at home, which is awesome. But we have actually started seeing a lot of green shoots in the last month, because all of us on the Zoom call today have an inherent belief in humankind to be resilient and fight it out. Okay, and we are actually seeing that come through a lot earlier. To give you some stats, right? 50 to 60. More than 3/4 of our companies are already at 50 to 60% of pre-COVID levels, give or take, right? So it is a phenomenal reinstatement of our belief in overall humankind, and that's the activity I'm sure you'll see everywhere. Not only true for VC or Sequoia companies, right? So and like some of our folks, some of our partners who've seen this a long time, says the best companies get created. Google, PayPal, were created after the dot-com bust. We invested in WhatsApp, a couple of years down the global financial crisis, and the list can go on, right? So the good news is the best in business is at your level today, and if you believe that you have that in you, you can be the next big what in the industry. So on that happy note, I'll hand over. Thank you. Thank you.